Hello there, you guys. Y'all almost didn't come on tonight. I was sitting here. Well, I had just cooked me like a little healthy, little something to snack on, and I was listening to my music and wash. I was gonna wash dishes, which I am gonna. So I'm not gonna stay on here long, but it's something about that music and it's raining real hard. I was like, man. But I wanted to get on and talk about the governor. Did I spell governor right? It's something that looks different about governor. Let me see if I spelled it right because it don't look right. Governor. I want to Go. Is it Ner? It's something wrong about it. Governor. I spelled it right. Hey, you guys. Remy, you're not gonna do this today. She always getting scared of the thunderstorm. Real balls. Hey, April. Sinwu. Kawana. On the other thing, I want to just do a video, a pre-recorded video. Hey, Tamara J. I wanted to talk about the governor has responded to Tony Kurthers. Okay. I want to talk about that. I kind of want to talk about, because people are kind of divided about this situation. And I think it's more so, it's not necessarily that, did I put the picture up? Let me see if I put the picture up. It's not necessarily that they think that he is, I did. It's not that they think that he didn't do it. I think a lot of people are just kind of torn about they don't believe in the death penalty and they go if he did it, just let God deal with them and all of that. That's how some people feel. Okay. um the victims' families, um and others who was kind of close to the situation, they feel differently. Okay. But the governor responded, and the governor says that he is not going to stop it. I told y'all um, that governor, he don't stop nothing. Okay. He's been the worst governor that Tennessee could ever have. And I'm just talking about for more reasons, more reasons than I can okay. Yeah, make sure y'all hit the like button for me. Hold on, you guys. Y'all be having so many tabs open. It's ridiculous. Okay. Let me go back.
Governor Lee is denying a clemency request from a man convicted of killing 3 people in Memphis more than 30 years ago. In a statement, the governor says, quote, After deliberate consideration of Tony Kurthers' request for clemency and after a thorough review of the case, I am upholding the sentence of the state of Tennessee and do not plan to intervene, end quote. The 57-year-old Kurthers is scheduled to be executed at 10 Thursday morning for the 1994 killings of Marcellus Anderson.
Maybe he's in a state of shock. Okay. I worked for the sheriff's office. Okay. And just before I got on here and started talking about this, I was reading some of the comments that some of the jailers had made, that was posting that had worked in the jail. Stop. When Tony Kurthers and Montgomery was in the jail. And one in particular says that, according to him, Kurthers used to walk around bragging about um, doing these unalivings. Yeah, I got some paperwork, and I kind of want to read to you all just a little bit because there were other, there were other people um, that has spoken up, and this is public paperwork, and I'm just gonna read a little bit of it, okay? And I'm sure when people make statements and they recant their statements, oftentimes they recant those statements because of fear, okay? It says for events in 1994, a Shelby County jury convicted Tony Kurthers of 3 counts of first-degree murder, the 3 counts of especially aggravated kidnapping, and 1 count of especially aggravated robbery. The petitioner unsuccessfully appealed his conviction as well as filed post-conviction relief, federal habeas corpus relief, and motions to reopen. As relevant here, in 2021, the petitioner filed a petition pursuant to Post-Conviction Fingerprint Analysis Act of 2021. He sought fingerprint analysis comparison of prints taken from the home of the 2 victims and known latent prints of Ronnie Irvin, a man implicated in these murders, by co-defendant James Montgomery in 2010. The post-conviction court similarly dismissed the petition after concealing the petitioner was not entitled to mandatory or discretionary testing on appeal. Okay, so let's go down a little bit. It says the petitioner and his co-defendant James Montgomery and Jonathan Montgomery were each indicted for 3 counts of premeditated unalivings of Marcello Anderson and mother Dolores and Frederick Tucker. Both James Montgomery and the petitioner were also indicted on 3 counts of especially aggravated kidnapping of all 3 victims and 1 count of especially aggravated robbery of Marcello Anderson. Okay, let's go down a little bit further because I don't want to bore you all. I kind of want to get to the meat of it. It says Marcellus Anderson was heavily involved in the drug trade along with 2 other men, Andre Baby Brother and Terrell Adair. Anderson wore expensive jewelry, including a large diamond ring, carried large sums of money and on his person, and kept a considerable amount of cash in his attic of his mother's home. Victim Dolores Anderson, when his body was discovered, Anderson was not wearing any jewelry and did not have any cash on his person. Anderson was acquainted with both defendants, and he considered Tony Kurthers to be a close, trustworthy friend. The proof showed that Anderson's trust was misplaced. In the summer of 1993, Jimmy Lee, I don't want to be saying these people's names because I don't know if they're still alive or not, but I'll just say Jimmy Lee, I won't say his last name, a convicted felon, received 2 letters from Tony Kurthers, who was then in prison on unrelated charges. In the letters, the petitioner referred to a master plan that was a winner. Tony Kurthers wrote of his intention to make those streets pay me and announced everything I do from now on will be well organized and extremely violent. Later in the fall of 93, while incarcerated at the correction center, his release, Tony was assigned to a work detail at a local cemetery, the West Tennessee Veteran Cemetery. At one point, as he helped bury a body, Tony Kurthers remarked to the inmate Charles Ray, I won't say his last name, that a good way you can bury somebody if you're going to unalive them. He said that's a good way that you can bury somebody if you're going to unalive them. Smith also testified that he overheard Tony Kurthers and James Montgomery, who also was incarcerated, talking about Marcellus Anderson, a close friend of Tony Kurthers. And Marcellus Anderson had driven Tony Kurthers back to the reception center from a furlough. According to Smith, when Montgomery asked Tony Kurthers who Anderson was, Tony Kurthers told him that both Anderson and baby brother Johnson dealt drugs and had a lot of money. The petitioner said he and Montgomery, Tony said that he and Montgomery could rob and get Anderson and Johnson once he was released from prison. On November 3, he left the reception center. Cello Anderson picked him up, okay, when he was released. Anderson went to Andre Johnson's house and received, accompanied by Anderson to Andre Johnson's house. And Cello gave Tony Kurthers a gift of $200 cash. Okay, Johnson and Terrell Adair was present at the home at that time. Y'all know I got to put my glasses on. I can read. I just be losing where I'm at because my eyes and stuff getting bad. Okay, it says on 1 month later, on December 15, 1993, Smith was released from Department of Corrections. Upon his release, Smith went to Cello Anderson and warned him that Tony Kurthers and James Montgomery planned to get him. According to Smith and Johnson, Anderson did not take the warning or the defendant's threat seriously because he had such a close relationship with Tony Kurthers. In mid-December 1993, Mays, his brother, and the petitioner were riding around together. They came up on Terrell Adair's red Jeep on the street in front of Dolores Anderson's home, where a drive-by shooting had just occurred. Adair had been injured in the shooting and was in the hospital. Lulu, James Montgomery's brother, was at the scene of the shooting, and he joined the petitioner in the back seat of Mays' car. According to Mays, the petitioner remarked to Jonathan that it would be the best time to kidnap Marcello. And Jonathan asks, which one, baby brother or Marcelo? The petitioner then nudged Montgomery with his elbow and said it was going to take place after James Montgomery was released from prison. After 2 weeks later, on December 31st, Mays saw the petitioner loading 3 antifreeze containers into a car, and the petitioner indicated to Mays that the containers was filled with gasoline. On January 11, 1994, James Montgomery was released from prison. After his release, Montgomery told baby brother that he, not Johnson, was in charge of the neighborhood. Montgomery said it was hold on, let me go down, that it was his neighborhood before he left, and now he's back, and it's going to be his neighborhood again. Montgomery asked Johnson if he wanted to go to war about the neighborhood. When Johnson said no, Montgomery replied, you feeling now like I'm about to blow your MF brains out, and you all need to get in line around here, and we're going to war about this neighborhood. Near the end of January or the 1st of February 94, Johnson and Adair saw defendants sitting together in an older model gray car down the street from Johnson's mother's house. It was a late night between 11 p.m. and 1 p.m. When the defendant approached Johnson and Adair, Montgomery asked why they thought he was trying to harm them. Montgomery told them, look, I told you we ain't got no problems, and nobody is with nobody in this neighborhood. We already got our man staked out. If we wanted some trouble or something, we got you right now. We killed your whole family. Confirming Montgomery's statement, the petitioner told them, we already got our man marked out, talking about Cello. Okay. I'm going to go on down. Okay. On February 23rd, 1994, Marcelo Anderson borrowed a white Jeep Cherokee from his cousin, last name Harris, around 4:30 on the afternoon of February 94. Witnesses saw Marcelo Anderson and Frederick Tucker riding in the Jeep along with James and Jonathan Montgomery. About 5 p.m. that day, James and Jonathan Montgomery and Anderson and Tucker arrived in the Jeep Cherokee at the house of a cousin of Montgomery. And I won't say her name. I don't be liking to say people names like that. Okay, I won't say her name, even though this stuff is public. I don't want to say their names. Okay, but it was a female. Okay, the Montgomery's brothers' cousins. The young lady, her 4 children, and Benton. Okay, I won't say that. Their other cousin were present at the house when they arrived. The 4 men entered the house and went downstairs to the basement. A short time later, James Montgomery came back upstairs and asked his female cousin if she could leave for a while so he could take care of some business. The cousin told Wes that she thought they were being kidnapped, and then she left the house with her children and another person. The person agreed to care for her children while she attended a meeting. When she returned home after the meeting, she saw only James Montgomery and Tony Kurthers. Montgomery asked her to pick up her children and to stay gone a little longer. When she returned home with her children before 10 p.m., the Jeep Cherokee was gone. But James Montgomery and Tony Kurthers were still present at the home. Montgomery told his cousin to put her children to bed upstairs, remained there until he told her he was leaving. Sometime later, Montgomery called out to his cousin that he was leaving. She returned downstairs and saw James Montgomery and Tony Kurthers and the two victims, Anderson and Tucker, leave in the Jeep Cherokee. Prior to trial, the cousin told the police that Anderson and Tucker's hands were tied behind their backs when they left the house. While she admitted making this statement, she testified at trial the statement was false and that she had not seen Anderson and Tucker hands tied behind their back when they left the home. Okay, so she started recanting her statements. Around 8 p.m. on February 24, another young lady, I don't want to say her name, telephoned her, Miss Briggs, okay, telephoned her aunt, the victim, Dolores Anderson, when someone picked up the telephone but said nothing. Briggs hung up. Briggs called a couple more times but received no answer. Briggs was living with Dolores Anderson at the time and arrived at her aunt's house around 9 p.m. Although Dolores Anderson was not home, her purse, her keys, and everything else was there. Her food was left in her bedroom, and it indicated that she had been interrupted while sitting there eating because, according to her, she had only eaten a little bit of the food, right? Hines, who had known the defendant since junior high school, testified that around 8:45 p.m. on February 24th, 1994, James Montgomery beat him. Jonathan said, "Man, a ninja got them folks." When Hines asked what folks, Jonathan replied, "Cello or Cello and them," and said something about stealing $200,000. Jonathan then indicated that he could not talk more on the phone and arranged to meet Hines. Okay. Jonathan arrived at Hines' home at about 9 p.m. and told him, "Man, we got them folks out at the cemetery on Elvis Presley and we got $200,000. Man, a ninja had to kill them folks." At that point, James Montgomery beeped in and talked with Jonathan. When the telephone call ended, Jonathan asked Hines to drive with Jonathan. Okay, when the telephone to drive him to the cemetery, okay? Hines refused, but he allowed Jonathan to borrow his car. When Jonathan promised to return in an hour, when the car was not returned, Hines called James Montgomery's cellular phone at about 11 p.m. James told Hines that he did not know where Jonathan was, that Jonathan did not have a driver's license, and that the car should be returned by 4 a.m. because Jonathan was supposed to drive James to his girlfriend's house. The Jeep that Anderson had borrowed was found in Mississippi on February 25th around 2:40 a.m. It had been destroyed by fire. Okay, y'all, this right here is a lot of paper. I can't read all this, but I was just trying to get to the meat of it. So basically, there have been other people who actually gave statements. Okay. Quite a few of them recanted those statements. Now, when people give statements and they recant those statements and stuff, um, it oftentimes it's because you know, of intimidation. Oftentimes. Now, I know James Montgomery tried to, not James Montgomery, Tony Kurthers had said that there was one jailhouse, allegedly one jailhouse snitch that the police had paid to fabricate lies on him. But at the same time, you know, when you get to looking at some of this stuff, it was quite a few people that actually talked. Like I said, they ended up recanting their stories. But once you tell something, you can recant it if you want to, but it's you done told it now. So, anyways, it goes on to talk about March 3rd, about 1 week after the missing person report was filed on Dolores and Cello. Um, Jonathan Montgomery directed Detective Jack Ruby of the Memphis Police Department to the grave of Dorothy Daniels at the Rose Hill Cemetery on Elvis Presley. So, Jonathan Montgomery, which is James Montgomery's brother, that was found hanging in his cell, he is ultimately the one that told them where the bodies of these people were. Now, he was also being charged with this. He was a co-defendant, but he ended up hanging. They say he hung himself. Okay, well, I think that's what's on paper. If you talk to some of the jealous, they say something else. Okay. Um, it says an employee of the cemetery testified that a pressed wood box or vault had been placed in Daniel's grave during working hours on February 24th, and that it would have taken at least two people to remove the box. Daniel's casket had been placed in the grave inside of the box on February 25th. And according to Dr. Hugh Edwards Berryman, one of the forensic one of the forensics who assisted in the removal of the bodies from the crime scene, there was no evidence to suggest that Daniel's casket had been disturbed after he was buried. Thus, it can be inferred that the bodies of the three victims were placed in the grave and covered with dirt and a piece of plywood prior to the casket being placed in the grave. Oh, wow. Anyways, you guys, I want to go down a little bit more, but when you get to reading about this, and I know it happened in 94, but it does not change, that the crime was heinous in nature. And I guess my thing is, you had another man that ended up pleading out and um getting lesser time. He was able to get an appeal, and then he pleaded out and got a lesser charge, and then he turned around and said that it was somebody named that he called Fisheye or something that was with him. He says that it was not Tony Carruthers that was with him. They're saying that there were about 4 or 5 other people, fingerprints that was unidentified. Okay, that was found at the crime scene or something like that. I'm sure that it was more than likely more than 1 or 2 people. You know what I mean? It was more than likely more than 1 or 2 people. I guess I just feel like when it's a crime that heinous, um, all these other people that they're saying was involved, nobody really knows what happened to them. Nobody knows. Because I mean, I think James Montgomery names another guy that was allegedly on the scene. That has not been talked about. So if they have not arrested some of these people, then James Montgomery is walking around. He get an appeal and plead guilty to second degree, and he do 21 years and he's out. um I guess I feel like maybe they could commute his sentence to a life sentence, um since it looks like to me that as heinous as these crimes are, and I'm not saying that it's right, like they've given everybody else very minimum and has not even said anything about some people at all for some reason, right? So, do I think he was involved? I absolutely believe that he was involved. I do. But there are some DNA testing that they was trying to get, so that because now those fingerprints and stuff, that DNA, everything is more sophisticated now. I don't think that it would exonerate him like he per se as he think it would. I mean, it could prove that there was more people on the scene, because I definitely believe that he was involved, because like I said, reading this paperwork, Marcelo trusted Tony Carruthers. He messed with Tony Carruthers the long way. Like when Tony Carruthers was on a work release or whatever, it was Cello that was, taking him back and forth when he was on work release. I guess back then, they was a little freer with with the way they did things with inmates than they are now. It would have been Tony Carruthers that knew his operation, because that is who he was close to. And even when the inmate in jail, what's up, Diane? Even when the inmate that knew all of them that was in jail with them got out and went to Marcelo, and told him, look, I heard James Montgomery and Tony Carruthers talking about they was gonna get you. Cello brushed it off because Carruthers was his boy. Carruthers, they was tight. You heard him say when Carruthers got out, Anderson Marcelo was the one that went and picked Carruthers up from jail when he was released and gave him money to put in his pocket. Back then, $200 was a lot of money. Back in like 93, 94, right? That's 93. Okay, 200 was a pretty good amount of money. So this is boy the whole time they was sitting in jail plotting, and when they get out, allegedly, according to whoever these people are that gave these statements or whatever, Montgomery said, we're taking the neighborhood back, okay, and we're gonna be violent with taking it back, but y'all ain't got nothing to worry about because we already have stalked out our man. And the man that they had stalked out was the man that they was chilling with. They was Cello and them was riding around with them, because of how close Cello thought he was to Tony Carruthers. It kind of made him trust James Montgomery, because you heard him say James Montgomery didn't even know Marcelo until he saw, I guess, with his flashy cars and jewelry and all of that. Somehow he done seen him dropping Carruthers back off at the work release program and just happened to inquire about him. And Carruthers, according to whoever these people are, the witnesses, say, "Oh, that's my boy. Hey, we could rob him. He got plenty of money. He knew what a stack was. He knew what he had, right?" So I mean, it is cold. It's heinous. I was reading that when they shot Cello in the head, in the forehead, then they shot him in the neck twice. And they said that even though they shot him in the head and they shot him in the neck 2 times, it was not life threatening. It went through his spine. So it would have paralyzed him, but it was not life threatening. He could have survived if he had gotten some help. He was going to be paralyzed. The exact same thing they said about, according to what's in the paperwork, the exact same thing they said about Frederick. They shot him in the neck, and it hit his spine and went out of him. But had he gotten help, he could have definitely survived. None of them died immediately. They died from suffocation. The mother, they had a like a scarf that and they tried to choke her out. They decided that they was going to strangle her, but then decided, according to them, according to people, and that because you had a lot of people to go to the police, right? But according to what I saw in some of the paperwork, they claimed that Tony Carruthers said to them, now, even though he was fighting for his life, according to some of the people in the jail, and it was more than one that was cellies with him, claimed that Tony Carruthers had said he was bragging about it, and then he said that he told Dolores, the mother, they tried to strangle her, she didn't die, and then they told her, threw her in the ditch, threw her in the grave and said, "Bitch, get down there and die with your son." Okay, and then they buried him and put the casket on top. Put some dirt on him and put a I forget what they call it on top of him, and then put the casket on top of him. So I mean, it was definitely heinous. Frederick Tucker's father, we pulled that up last night. His father says that he's been waiting 30 something years to get justice for his 17-year-old son. His son was still a minor. They say he wasn't even into drugs. He was just real tight with Cello. Okay. I mean, if we believe what's in the paperwork, the mistake that Cello made, and I mean, was being in the street life, number one, but trusting Tony, because Montgomery wouldn't have even known or even honed in on him if he had not been so tight and being there for Tony. Because when he was, like they said, on work release, he was getting Cello to drop him off. Cello was keeping him laced up, and but the whole time they was in jail, while Cello was helping him while he was in jail, putting money on his, trying to be his, but they was tight, trusted him to the point where when another friend of Tony Kurthers and Cello got out of jail, the dude said in the paperwork, "I went straight to Cello or Cello, whatever y'all call it. I went straight to Cello. I went straight to him and said, listen, your boy Tony and James, I overheard them saying that they gonna get you." And he brushed it off. "No, my boy Tony ain't gonna get me. That's my boy. I take care of him." Okay. So I don't know, y'all. I've heard some of the authorities say that they've asked Tony Carruthers, does he feel bad, about what happened? And his response has always been the same: "I don't feel nothing. I didn't do it. I wasn't there." So, you would think a dude that trusted him and they were supposed to be real cool and all of that, I would think that my emotions would be of, yes, I hate it happened. That was my boy. We was cool. We was tight. I knew his mama. Yeah, I mean, I hate that happened, but I ain't do it. But they say his response has always been, "I don't regret nothing. I don't feel nothing. I wasn't there." So, I mean, and you hear people say, like, it just goes to show that that's cold, because Cello got in position that he was in for, because he thought Tony Carruthers was his friend, right? So they robbed him of everything. They said Marcelo kept all his jewelry. Back in the 90s, everybody wanted to buy some. They wore a lot of big rings and stuff, gold jewelry, and that big hunk of necklace or whatever that shit, rope necklace or whatever that shit is. They said he ain't had none of that. They stripped him of all of that. But they're saying that Carruthers' brother Jonathan, the one that was found hanging in his cell, according to the jailers, he didn't kill himself. According to the people that was working there, somebody was sent down there and did that to him. But my thing is, how did they allow that to happen? They know it happened. Every jailer that worked there that knew about that situation say that. I remember the first time I was as in service, and I heard a lot of those old head jailers that was out there talking when we was on break. They was talking about James Montgomery. And they was talking about how James Montgomery had somebody had brought a gun in, and and they brought a gun in for James Montgomery, and then once they was told about it, DRT went in to do a shakedown, and James Montgomery stood there and laughed, Edelman said, "Y'all late." He had already. I sent the gun up wherever he was going to serve his time at a month ago. He had already sent the gun to where he was going to be at about a month ago. I know, a big hunk of jewelry, because that's all it is. That fake. I don't. That jewelry. They spend all their money on that, and I think that is just so country. I like some diamonds, but I don't want no big fat diamond necklace. To me, that is, I mean, especially them big old gold ropes, and that is just so freaking country. Okay, so I don't know, when you listen to the people that worked in the jail, they would always say, and I wasn't there around that time. I wasn't working for the sheriff's office when they were there. They was long gone by the time I started working there. But um they said that everybody always said the same thing. They said that James Montgomery was way colder and Tony Carruthers was more crazy. And so you listen to some of the trial and stuff, they get to talking about um that Tony Carruthers always had mental illnesses. Like he was always on mental meds because he was bipolar. I didn't know back in the 90s that people was being diagnosed as being bipolar, okay, and schizophrenic. But I mean, they had records of him always being on mental meds. It was a history of it, okay, because that stuff is subpoenaed. So I don't know. I mean, it's a lot more stuff. Um, because I got 15 pages right here. I just don't want to read it. But it's public information, child. I don't want nobody to think I got nothing that ain't out there. I be want to be left alone. Okay. She got something she gonna tell on us, child. It's in the paperwork and it's public. Okay. I wouldn't get on here and read nothing that ain't public. Okay. Um, I would read a little bit more of it because you get down to the bottom. I've been trying to I've been trying to when they found the bodies and stuff. Um and that's at the bottom. So I'm gonna try to get down there to that. But when I think about reading that, like it's really sad. Like it's a reminder of how cold people are. Like it's scary to it's sad. It's scary to think that you're living in this world with people that are totally animalistic, right? That's just cold and animalistic, right? It really is sad. Um, they're saying that Tony Carruthers said he don't want his last dinner. Okay, hold on one second. Let me show y'all something. How would you feel? Um, I know who
Groups delivered a petition with more than 100,000 signatures to Governor Lee today, urging him to stop Tony Carruthers' execution. Carruthers was sentenced to death for his conviction of a 1994 triple murder. Prosecutors say he kidnapped, tortured, and buried 3 victims alive. State Capitol reporter Tori Gessner has more.
There are no do-overs with execution.
Right.
Few things are more impactful than 100,000 signatures.
The voices of now
No, he's not
over
black.
114,000
He's
people.
not black.
Today, faith and community leaders brought their case straight to Governor Bill Lee's office.
Justice for Tony!
With a message of mercy, advocates asked him to stop the execution of Tennessee inmate Tony Kurthers in a last-ditch effort to spare his life.
The book of Proverbs commands us to speak up for those who cannot speak up for themselves.
Stay the execution!
And to ensure justice for those who are being crushed.
Yes, indeed!
It's not a suggestion, but it's a command.
Kurthers was convicted in the 1994 killing. The drug dealer Marcelo Sanders.
Still untested evidence and unresolved doubt. Why rush toward an
I wanted to show Kurthers. Kurthers called into a show. And I wanted to okay, so they say his brothers are speaking out. One of them looked like him, one of them looked like James Montgomery. But they said it was cousins because he sure looked like James Montgomery.
Free my brother Tony Kurthers.
What is the issue that you want to give to us and describe your brother's reality?
My brother's reality is he's on death row for something he didn't do. And they're trying to execute him next month on the 21st. And he has a little time to get out right now. So we're trying to push so the governor or someone can stop his execution at this moment.
Why should the governor stop that execution specifically?
Because his co-defendant is out of jail. He already said that my brother had nothing to do with it. So they got DNA proof that he had something to do with it. So he should be out.
Good. Describe the reality of who your brother is. Like, who is your brother to you?
So he's everything. He's my big brother. He got a daughter, got a grandbaby. He got brothers and sisters that love him. His mother's gone. He done seen 30 some people in our family done passed that he didn't never get a chance to grieve. So it's kind of hard.
Oh, wow. So his mother has passed. I think I can remember seeing his mom on the news. Oh, wow. Hold on, you all. I'm trying to. Hold on, you guys. Hold on. I'm gonna show y'all a little bit of this. Thank you, darling.
That's pretty gruesome, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, but I wasn't there.
On May 21st, 2026, the state...
Well, it was pretty gruesome, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, but I wasn't there.
On May 21st, 2026, the state of Tennessee plans to execute a man named Tony Kurthers. It is did, and that's not high.
I'm trying to get the video. Tony Kurthers did a interview. Let me see. I'm trying to find that interview that Kurthers did. Hold on, you all. I don't know why I can't find it. Because I saw it. Hold on, you all. This is not it, but I'm looking for it.
Greetings, everyone, and thanks for being here. It's very important to a lot of us. Again, I want to welcome you on the press conference. It was sponsored by Witness Citizens, the only national organization of death row survivors, both men and women who had been sentenced to death in this country, wrongfully so, later on thankfully released. And now we share our stories, our experience, and hopes. Stabbed so forcefully that it bent that blade. And some of my experts, people looked at that and said the perpetrator probably cut himself. And thankfully, then Arizona passed a new law.
What's at stake, and why should we always err on the side of justice? And what's at stake is everything. You know, my office is in the business of helping innocent people go home. And every time an innocent person is convicted of a crime they didn't commit.
And I know I looked at that interview. Okay, I found it, you guys. I found it. I found the interview that Tony Kurthers did recently. And he hadn't done many interviews at all, but since this execution is supposed to happen, he's been doing interviews.
Is using his voice to set the record straight, to talk about.
Came to visit me and said that my mama had contacted him and that they had found 3 people buried in a cemetery, and that he instructed me, Tony, don't talk to anybody. And I said, I ain't talking to nobody since I've been here. Turning name was Ward. And the next day, the homicide officer, Rolderson, came to the jail and charged me with 3 counts of first-degree murder.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back to my cell, and then 30 minutes later, the parole board served me with a parole hold because I had been recently released from prison like 4 months earlier. So that's how the nightmare started. So go the next day for arraignment and general session, and then I set out for a week to get an attorney appointed. Well, not appointed, but hired or whatever. So we ended up hiring the same attorney that came to the jail to speak to me. And I knew this attorney from previous years from a juvenile, so I knew who he was when he came to see me. So we went to general session, what they call pre-trial, and for about 3 weeks they just set it off, and then they set it for a preliminary hearing. On preliminary hearing, which was on March 20, 1994, the prosecutor came in and told the judge, Your Honor, we want to drop these cases. We cannot go forward for lack of probable cause. And they dismissed the case in general session. So now I can leave, but I got a parole hold. But the parole verification hearing is for Wednesday, March the 30th, 1994. So I got to wait till Wednesday. So Saturday go by, Sunday go by, Monday go by. Tuesday night, I'm in the jail, and the guys came and said, hey, man, you know y'all on TV? I said, what? So we go in the back. And it was like breaking news. Shelby County District Attorney General and whoever the other people is has came back with an indictment against Tony Kurthers, James Montgomery, and Jonathan Montgomery. What? Yeah. So we go downstairs and get charged. So I come back up. So the next day I got to go to parole board now. So they're like, what do you want to do? We need to put this on so I can go to court and find out what's going on.
Yeah.
So they said the parole verification hearing off because I can't get released. They did this. So once we get to court, we still don't know what this grand jury indictment is about. And what they in fact did was the grand jury meets the first Tuesday of every month. This was the end of the month. They convened a special grand jury, and they went and took a guy whose last name is Shaw. And over that weekend, March 26th and 27th, a proper cause, a motive, a theory, all made up. And then on a Monday, they had him with the 28th. So we get a special grand jury. And what they did was they convened a special grand jury at the end of the month. So they went and found some people, citizens of Memphis, and took them before and set up a special grand jury. And took this guy whose last name is Shaw, which you can see his videos years later on YouTube. They manufactured lies and gave them to him. He said, and then we found out 8 years later that he's actually undercover informant. And how we find that out is he framed a deputy jailer, and the case is on the logbook. And if you read in the logbook, State versus Story, you would see this guy whose last name is Shaw saying we went and picked him up. Well, I'm on post-conviction at this. I've been convicted. So my attorneys filed a motion asking that the state turn over all in its material. It would have changed the outcome of the case. So the prosecutor who's actually handling the post-conviction, last name is Campbell, who is now on the Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals, is the one that took Mr. Shaw to the grand jury to present the lies. So he said, we don't know of any time that Mr. Shaw has ever been informed for anybody. But he's in the logbook as being informant. So for 20 years, they just going on and on talking about he's an informant because it's impeachment evidence, and they won't turn over his file. So I got a court order, and the judge ordered him to turn over his Memphis Police Department file, his Sheriff Department file, and his FBI file. We still don't got the Sheriff Department file today, 32 years later. We still don't have the FBI file. But we got the organized crime file. And in the organized crime file, in 1991, he had stole $750 from them, and they alleged like they was going to charge him with a crime and never did. So they knew he wasn't reliable, and they knew he was a thief, but they continued to use him. So this guy, this evidence that I would have been able to use pre-trial has been concealed from me for 32 years. So back to the trial.
Well, he's claiming, he's alleging that they went and got an informant and paid the informant to frame him. He basically said, now you have to think about now, Jonathan Montgomery led them to where the bodies were. That was James Montgomery's brother. So if he led them to where the bodies was, I mean, according to some of the jailers, he told on them. And after they knew that allegedly that Jonathan allegedly was going to testify, he came up hung in his cell. Okay.
So what happened is he got cancer, and they thought he might die. So they asked for a deposition so they could preserve his testimony in case he died. So we had a deposition in February of February the 16th, 1995. And that's how we find out what lie they took to the grand jury. First time I've seen him since 5 years earlier. As me and him got into an altercation about the telephone, 1990, August of September 1990. I hadn't seen this guy since then. So him, because they preserve the record. So once we hear the lie, I get my attorney, would you please go get the jail records to prove this man ain't been nowhere around me? Go get the incident reports from 1990. But when we get the records, we go back and file a motion, ask the judge, can we get another deposition of Mr. Shaw?
So this man in question was a jailhouse informant in your case.
Jailhouse informant, FBI informant, Sheriff Department informant, and a Memphis Police Department informant. His Memphis Police Department informant number, if you don't want me to say, I would not go on the number. He's not just a jailhouse informant. He's a paid informant on the streets who shouldn't have to be paid through Crime Stoppers when he's already on 3 different law enforcement payrolls.
Wow.
He's basically moonlighting through Crime Stoppers. He's tripling his pay.
He's pretty much a criminal that's acting as the police out in
as
the
law
streets,
enforcement.
gathering information. He's out in the streets gathering information for the police and getting paid by the police, whether it's FBI, CIA, SBI, or the Memphis Police Department. He's getting paid by them. And so now for everybody that may not understand what Tony's speaking of as far as a deposition, they took Tony saying they come in and had this man to testify as if he was on his deathbed. And this testimony that this man was going to give in open court and whatever he writes in a affidavit would stand up in trial. And it would be as his actual words. The DA or a...
So let me ask you all something. What do you all think? What do you all think that Tony Kurthers' part was in this situation? Do you all think that he was? Do you, not to say guilty or not, but he was telling other detainees his plan. I don't know. You know, I keep Cello was his friend, or well, he wasn't his. Well, Cello thought he was his friend. He had some type of relationship with Cello, but you never hear him say anything about. He don't have any emotion about what happened. That we can see, okay? It's not like that Cello was just some random dude. Like, it wasn't like he was like some random drug dealer. This was somebody that he was acquainted with. Y'all make sure y'all hit the like button for me. Make sure you guys please run the likes up. Like, share, and subscribe. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna go down a little bit further. Hold on, you all. I'm gonna go down to the bottom. Just the two of us. Okay. It says employees at the cemetery testified that a pressed wood box or vault had been placed in Daniel's grave during working hours. Okay. So Dr. O.C. Smith, who helped remove the bodies from the grave and who performed autopsies on the victims, testified that when they found the bodies of Dolores Anderson was lying at the bottom of the grave, and the bodies of the two male victims were lying on top of her. So they threw her down there first and then threw the men on top of her afterwards. Okay, so, and I guess they threw them afterwards because they shot Cello in the forehead and then shot him in the neck, and he still didn't die. They said he could have survived. The bullet hit his spine and went out. I don't know what happened when they shot him in the head. Didn't blow his brains out. It went on out too. So they said he lived, and the other one did too, because they shot the young 17-year-old man in the neck. It says the two male victims were lying on top of her. The hands of all three victims were bound behind their backs. Frederick Tucker's feet were also found bound. His neck showed signs of bruising caused by ligature. Oh, wow. Hold on, y'all. Hold on. Oh, wow. So they had tied something around his neck too. They tried to choke him out too. Okay. The 17-year-old. Oh, wow, this stuff is so heinous. They said Frederick Tucker had, it says Dr. Smith testified that Dolores Anderson, okay, let me go back up. All three victims were bound behind their backs. Frederick Tucker's feet were also bound, and his neck showed signs of bruising by ligature. A red sock was found around Dolores Anderson's neck. Marcelo Anderson was not wearing any jewelry. Dr. Smith testified that Dolores had died from asphyxia caused by several factors: the position of her head against her body, dirt in her mouth and nose, and trauma from the weight on her body. Frederick Tucker had received a gunshot wound to his chest, which would not have been fatal had he received medical care. He had also suffered injuries from blunt trauma to his abdomen, which means they beat him up, and head, and broken ribs. So they beat him up really bad. A fractured skull and a ruptured liver. Dr. Smith opened that Tucker was shot and placed in the grave where the force of compression from the buried products and other injuries, and also the gunshot wound, caused his death. According to Dr. Smith, Marcelo Anderson had been shot 3 times, a contact wound to his forehead that was not severe. So they shot him in the forehead and they said it wasn't severe. And 2 shots to his neck, one of which was not serious. However, the other bullet through the neck had entered Anderson's windpipe and severed his spinal cord, paralyzing him from the neck down. The wound was not instantly fatal. Anderson had also suffered blunt trauma to his abdomen from compression of forces. Dr. Smith opened the opinion that each victim was alive when they were buried. Defendant James Montgomery presented no proof. The petitioner, acting pro se, called several witnesses to rebut the testimony offered by state, primarily by attacking the credibility of the state's witnesses. A health administrator at the correction center testified that because of injury to his arm, James Montgomery had been given a job. Change on October 6, 1993, and had not worked at the cemetery after that date. Oh, wow. Another official at the reception center testified that Tony Kurthers was not released on furlough after Montgomery arrived at the reception center on November 4th, 1994. The proof was offered to impeach Smith's testimony that Montgomery and Kurthers discussed robbing and getting Marcellus Anderson after Anderson drove Tony Kurthers back to the reception center following a furlough. An investigator appointed to assist Tony Kurthers with his defense testified that he had interviewed the young man, I won't say his name, who admitted he did not know anything about the master plan to which Tony Kurthers referred in the letters until Kurthers was released from prison. On cross-examination, the investigator admitted that the person said that when he was released from prison, Tony Kurthers had explained the master plan involved kidnapping Marcello Anderson, Tony Kurthers' brother, and another witness testified that Jonathan Montgomery was not at the scene of the drive-by shooting involving Adair. This proof was offered to impeach the person's testimony that Tony Kurthers and Jonathan Montgomery discussed kidnapping Marcello on that day that Terrell. Okay. So, anyways, y'all. I mean, that's 15 pages. Y'all know I'm tired. I can't. We'll read it on a good day, but I'm gonna have to go through it, and so that I won't be just I'll go and scratch out names because I forget and be saying these people's names. And which it is public. It is absolutely 100% public. It's out there. So, you guys, he's got less than 48 hours. They're saying that on Thursday at 10 a.m. I don't know if they're going to shoot him up because Tennessee still has the electric chair. I forget what they said. Either they're going to give him medicines or the electric chair. And that's something. They give him a choice of which one he wants. That's something that he got to choose which one. Either the electric chair or the injection. And knowing him, he's probably not going to choose either. I don't think with the type of personality we see he got, I don't think he's going to I don't think he's going to choose. But my thing is, if you have James Montgomery out, And you have other things that have not been tested. There were other fingerprints of several other people that was on the scene also. And there's DNA tested before you test it. I know what they're saying. What he's saying there is that they feel like regardless to whether it's other people on the scene or not, he was there. Well, they should be interested in seeing who the others were too. But I think they feel like he'll try to use that to his advantage to say that he wasn't there, because they said now his fingerprints were not on the scene. It don't mean nothing, but I think they say his fingerprints was not on the scene. He is he's in Nashville on death row. So he's at a facility in Nashville. So where is he housed? And right loose ends for sure. You're welcome, Kawana. I tell you, it's a sad thing. Even just remembering the victims and how they suffer. You know what I mean? That's a horrendous and heinous way to lose your life. I get to thinking about, can you imagine the stuff when Cello knew that they was going to take him out? When they had him kidnapped and they took him back to his mama's house. They took the mama because the mother knew them. That's the only thing I could see. I mean, James, he shortly after James Montgomery got out, this happened, but they had to have taken her because she knew Kurthers. And whoever else that was on that scene, it was more people, seemed like to me. But can you imagine the type of stuff that was going through Cello's head? Being that it's in the paperwork that a young man that knew both of them went to him and told him that they were setting up a play to get him, and he didn't believe it. So this it's sad. He's been on death row for 30 something years. Most people don't make it to the electric chair because they die before they get to it. It's a tragedy, for both families. It's very hurtful to me to see the young man the 17-year-old Mr. Tucker, his father, his 17-year-old boy was killed. He was still a baby. And I mean, that was just it was just cold-blooded. According to what I was reading online today, some people who allegedly, a lady had wrote that allegedly when Tony Kurthers went to jail, a lot of the murders stopped around the area for a long time. But now the dude said that James Montgomery said that they was taking over the streets and they was going to do it violently. They said they was going to violently take over the streets. So I don't know. But James Montgomery didn't have a history of being in and out of jail. Let me see what Tony Kurthers. Let me see what if he's had what his history looked like. Let me see something. Y'all hit the like button for me. Let me see. Let's see, Tony Kurthers. It's two Tony. I wonder how old is Tony Kurthers. Let me see. Tony Kurthers' full name. Okay, his name is Tony Vaughn. Okay. Oh, Lord Jesus. Oh, Lord, have mercy. Oh, I ain't gonna even attempt. He got at least 5 pages worth of history on his background. Let's see. What's recorded starts from 86. In 1986, he had an assault with intent to commit first-degree murder. Okay. That was in 1986, assault with intention to commit murder, first degree. Oh, Lord have mercy. I don't even feel like going through his history. It's too many pages. Anyway, y'all. The ones that keeping me in. I think that they should commute it. If they let James out, then I think that they should commute his to life in prison. Without the possibility. Anyways, you guys, I'm gonna get off of here because I'm tired. I got some things I need to do. But I want you all to please like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate you all tuning in. When we will talk about this Thursday. We'll talk about this Thursday. Again Thursday, because y'all know he is scheduled to be on the live by the state of Tennessee at 10 o'clock a.m. on Thursday morning. So Governor Lee has said in the last hour he's not gonna stop it. The only other thing for Kim Kardashian to do is go to Trump, because Governor Lee will do whatever Trump say. Even though he don't have to, he will. And see if Trump can call in a favor. Anyways, you all, I want you all to please like, share, and subscribe. I'm tired and sleepy. If you want to support the channel, you can hit up the Cash App or the Super Thanks. I love you all. We'll talk later.